So I kind of wanted to talk about when we're qualifying assignments, and if we have time to get to it, we'll talk about the candidate side. But when we're qualifying assignments, um, short of money, and I know that those of us in here probably don't necessarily sell positions based on money. I mean, unless it's just outrageous, or there's a benefit that is just absolutely unusual, like John's client that had unlimited, vacation, which I've never heard of a company doing in 30 years in this industry, and I've never heard of it in 57 years of being alive. What is some of the information that you really want to get from a hiring manager, and how do you go about doing it? What questions do you ask that helps you when you're creating a recruit presentation, and when you're working with those A players through the process? What kind of information are you gathering to be able to get them interested and keep them interested in the opportunity? And in the same sort of vein, how are you then using that information to coach hiring managers before an interview to bring that out? First and foremost, what's the information? What kind of questions are you asking? What information are you gathering? Patrick?
I mean, the first thing's the urgency. I mean, if it's not urgent, you kind of pull 180 and go find another project, right? Is that what you were asking? What we do with the client and discovery?
Well, what's kind of the information that you're gathering that helps you understand that, if I'm talking to an A player, this is a good opportunity. Urgency kind of keeps the project moving. It keeps the candidate efficiently going through the process. But what are those nuggets of gold about a company or whatever that you gather in assignments that really helps you say, hey, this is an attractive place to work?
I think when you got a company that's really going places, that's a good one. When there's a great product, that's a good one. I'll tell you, one of my favorite things to sell out there, when I've got a great boss that actually has a vision for where he wants to carry things, and really by reputation treats his people like great professionals, that I'll take that to market every day of the week.
Okay. How do you know that, Mark? I mean, what gives you that idea? What are some of the things that you've heard when you're qualifying assignment that really kind of makes you go, hey, this is one of those situations where I've got a great boss?
By the way he treats his people, a lot of times he'll tell me what his policy is, and I ask him too, how do you interact with your guys? Do you travel with them? Do you do this? Do you do that? And it's all in the way they give the information too. It's not just the information that they give. Some of it is a feeling, Jeff. I mean, I can't always quantify it, but you do get a sense, like with anything else, when you're talking to candidates, if you got a good one or you don't. I think it's similar with bosses. I've just never really thought about what's the criteria breakdown here necessarily. So I'm sorry if that's not helpful.
No, that's good. I mean, there's the gut feel. There's there's the intuition that you have that something's a good situation. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm kind of curious along those lines, Mark. I mean, have you ever talked to your hiring manager's employees? Almost like it's
yeah. That's why I say by reputation. Sometimes if I've tried to recruit a candidate, that's how I've gone after certain search assignments where they say, oh, there's no way I'm leaving this place. I work for this guy. He's great. These guys, what they do to take it. That's intel right there. Finding out why they won't leave where they're leaving. I want to look a little further into it. See if maybe sometimes if they'll help facilitate a discussion or a little recommendation on LinkedIn. Anything that'll grease the skids to get in and talk to somebody live.
Okay. So on recruiting assignments, you're kind of hearing when you're trying to recruit somebody that they wouldn't want to leave because of their boss, or maybe it's recommendations on that hiring manager's LinkedIn profile. Okay, that's good. Good, practical, pragmatic information for people to be able to use to gather that insight. Chris, what about you, Chris Hillman?
If there is a true retention situation going on, like I've got several clients where it's 20 to 30 years average salesperson with the company. And I could just sell it all day long. Hey, look, don't take my word for it, Jeff. Look at, LinkedIn and look at 4 territory sales reps. You'll see nobody moves on from here. I mean, that's just a huge one for me is retention. Sorry, that's the word I'm trying to spit out, retention.
Oh, that's good. Good.
Retention, and then what attracted them to the company and what's kept them with the company. I mean, those
Okay.
are big ones.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. At some point in time, they came to that company. However, they got. I mean, I'd be kind of curious. A, how'd they get there? I mean, were they recruited by somebody else? Were they referred? Did they see the job posted? What was it ultimately about them going to work for that company? Chris, I see you've been there for 10 years. I'm kind of curious. I know it was a long time ago, but what originally attracted you to the company? What keeps you there when somebody like yourself with the track record of success that you've had, what keeps you there when, you're probably a pretty valuable, asset on the open marketplace. You could easily go somewhere else. Why do you stay? I like that. Mr. Rosenthal, you're obviously doing, I know, Chris, you're doing a lot of relocations. So you've probably got to have, some good intel, some good info to be able to get people not just to change companies, but to actually pack up and move. What are you getting?
So the first thing is really what Raglan said with regard to it's a feeling. I mean, I really subscribe to that, but what comes after that? Sorry. I want to be sold. I want to be sold on the company. I'm truly not, we are not taking every single job order that comes past us. I want to believe that these people have a career path. I want to believe that they're going to be treated properly. So what does that mean? To get more granular, before you ask me anyway, I want to know that these people are going to be self-empowered. I want to know that they're not going to be micromanaged. I want to know that their managers trust that they're doing what they're doing, but then, obviously verify afterwards that it's done. We won't hire for a union shop. It's just a hard stop until one smaller company that has 3 mills told me, no, you don't understand. We're different. And here's why. So for people that don't know, most union shops, your manager or leader isn't allowed to pick up a wrench. Union rules. But, this hiring manager assured me it's not a contentious relationship. They work hand in hand. And if a manager wants to pick up a wrench and lead by example and say, guys, you know what, gather around, let me show you how it's done, it's welcomed. That is the only union shop that we will hire for. And we're on our second job order with them already, with the third one potentially coming this summer. So we want to believe in what they have to offer, because I don't want someone leaving in a month realizing that the place is a piece of shit. And again, a lot of that comes from what Raglan said, which is it's a feeling.
Sure. So, I mean, on the first go around, you might be kind of, I'm curious about that feeling with Chris, with you, with Mark. How often has that feeling been wrong?
I definitely got burnt one time. I think it's because I was a little bit newer to the industry before I really honed what I do and don't like. But again, I want to know that someone is taken care of, and if they can sell me, that first phone call is a date, right? The second one is essentially where you're going to get married. And I want to make sure that we marry this customer, because the truth is we can't pull from them for a year when money's changing hands. And ideally, you will never pull from them because you have a lifelong customer, and every single year you're placing multiple people. So I want it to be a good one. I won't hire for a company anymore that makes people sign non-competes. I just don't think that's fair at this point, at least in our industry, to say, hey, guess what? For 2 years, yeah, you have to leave the industry if you don't want to sell for our company. How do I put someone into that? A young guy or gal that's got a family and tell them, yeah, if it doesn't work here, you're not going to have a career for 2 years. So we really have to believe the value prop from the company, and they have to. I don't say it like this. I don't say you need to sell me, but they need to sell me. The company's always going to win. The recruiter's always going to win. But I really, really do believe I need to take care of the candidate. And because to ruin one person's life over something as small as that, I can't live with that.
Love it. Love it. Mark, when you're struggling with a hiring manager to get that kind of information out, or if somebody's just really whatever, they're hesitant, and you're not just ready to say, okay, this is a bad job order, let me walk away. I mean, what are some of the questions that you ask, or what is some of the reasoning behind why you're trying to gather this information, and how do you communicate it to a hiring manager so that they're a little bit more open, a little bit more communicative?
All I can ever really do, and this is usually in the case of sales. That's a very open-ended question you're giving me there, Jeff. Are you talking about what am I trying? You mean as far as what I'm trying to sell? You mean the opportunity or the boss himself?
Well, if I'm talking to a hiring manager, right, and I'm just not getting, I'm not getting the ebb and flow here. I'm not getting the information, but I'm not ready to just say, all right, time out. You're a source. You're a source company. I may want to still try and get this relationship going so I can recruit for them. I mean, how do you take that conversation? Maybe they're just not getting why you're asking the questions, or whatever. I don't know, but I'm just kind of curious.
No, I know what you're talking about, and no, I've used a number of different approaches. Sometimes I will be very direct, because especially if I'm noting like a hesitancy to really want to talk to me, hey, Jeff, you sound a little uncomfortable, with this line of questioning. I hope you understand that what I'm trying to gather here is the information I need to attract the very best talent that's out there for you. And sometimes I have to explain, look, these people, the top players, if that's what you're telling me you're looking for, their resumes are not on CareerBuilder. I didn't even know CareerBuilder existed still, until somebody brought it up. They don't answer ads. If your talent acquisition team is putting ads out there and they're all sparkly and beautiful, they're not even getting read. These are people that don't see me coming. They are top performers, and I go through that whole wrap. They're top performers in their industry. They, they're reasonably happy doing what they're doing, but they're willing to listen if something presented is a next logical move up for them. So the way they respond to that quite often will tell me, are they really looking for top level stuff, or are they trying to get me to find them a Mercedes so they can, pay for a Chevy, whatever, they want to pay us for. They want to buy a Mercedes on a Chevy budget.
Yeah. No, I like that. And I think, again, if you think about the environment that we're in, you guys, I mean, is it safe to say, with a nod of either no or yes, is it safe to say that the way we do what we do is different than the vast majority of our quote unquote competitors out there? Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely.
I think so. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and I've talked to a lot of quote unquote professionals in our space, and so many of them use job descriptions side by side with resumes to be the determining factor as to whether or not somebody's a fit. And I think that they're both absolutely useless documents. I think that job descriptions are trying to cast as wide a net, and most of the time, HR people or what have you, internal talent acquisition folks, or even hiring managers, they go out to Google, they Google search a job description for a blah, 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 and then they put their logo on it, and that's what gets posted. There isn't typically information on job postings. And Mark, to your point, I don't know what the percentage of candidates looking actually is. I mean, I've heard a bunch of different statistics. I've heard it's as low as 15%, maybe in the 20%, and that's going to vary depending upon the economy. I imagine in 2020, that number probably was a little bit north of that, in a candidate, pure candidate driven marketplace. Maybe it's less than that. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think, based on what I've seen, that the majority of candidates put their resumes on Career Builder, if it still exists, or ZipRecruiter or whatever. And so if they don't, or if they're not looking at postings because they're not unemployed, having to get a job, or they're not underemployed, feeling like they've got to go somewhere else to really achieve what they feel their value is, or they're not unhappily employed because their boss is a jerk, or whatever, then they're not looking. And so we got to be armed with information. As Mark says, we've got to be armed with information to go after these A players and tap them on the shoulder when they're not just sitting there staring at the phone going, I hope Mark Ragland calls me today. That's not happening. We're catching them probably out of the blue. And so we've got to have something that we can say to them to get them at least intrigued into having a conversation with us. And once we can do that, then all of a sudden we can uncover what their specific needs are, compare and contrast that to the job that we're trying to fill, and see if there's in fact a good fit. But again, I think that most people that call themselves professionals in our industry, whether they're third party like us or they're on the inside, they just don't go about it that way. They sling mud against the wall. They hope something sticks. And then when they place somebody, they run for the hills because they don't want to be around or be on the grid, during that 30-day guarantee period or 90-day guarantee period. So I think it's how do we communicate to hiring managers why it's in their best interest to give us this information that's going to arm us with, not a 22 shell when we're going after bear, but, a 44 Magnum when we're going after bear. I don't want to shoot and just piss people off. I want to shoot and bring somebody down, so to speak. Chris Rosenthal, how do you get a sort of a reluctant hiring manager that might not just be, communicating easily with you? I mean, what are some of the things that you say to them to get them to understand that it's in their best interest to answer these questions?
Well, first of all, it shows that you're not a gun guy by calling a 22 a shell, but away from that.
You're right.
Sorry.
Right. So, no, you're absolutely correct.
Repeat the question, please, because I was too busy trying to think of a way to zing you.
No. I just see it. I always didn't think you had to think about that. I thought this came off the cuff. But anyway, I mean, what are some of the things along the same lines as what I was asking Mark? If you've got a hiring manager that's a little bit slow on the uptake, that's not necessarily just giving you this, throwing up on you this information as to why their organization's the best place to be. How do you go about trying to get that information out of them?
Yeah, so the first thing is it's similar again to what Ragland said, which is, if the job is, I'm sorry, I think Patrick said it. If the job is more important to you than it is to them, walk away. So yeah, it's information gathering. It's just intel. It's a date, right? So what's the best way to get someone on a date to tell about themselves? Just to keep it going is just to ask them about themselves. So if they're not willing to give that information, tap. I mean, I'm out. It just doesn't make sense. I need it to go smoothly and quickly for it to make sense. I've got people on my team that need to be fed, and I'm not looking to waste time. And I always say this. I say, look, time's your biggest asset. I'm not looking to waste your time. If I waste your time, I've wasted my time, and that's not a good business model. So, I mean, it really is as simple as, okay, you're not going to give me the info, I'm out.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't say it like that to them. I'll probably end up with, thank you so much. I just don't have the bandwidth right now, but let's round up again in a month or two or something like that, because you don't want to make an enemy.
Yep.
I was going to add to that, though, before throwing in the towel, is simply explain to them what we do in terms of we're not posting a job. We're tapping on the shoulders of those who are employed, passive, don't know anything about this opportunity or don't know we're coming, basically. So what I like to do is just simply ask them, Mr. Hiring Manager, what are 2 or 3 or 4 things you can give me that would help convince somebody, frankly, to pick up the phone, to get on the line with you, or, that would, kind of convince a candidate to give a 2-week notice and come on board with you folks? What are those things? And the reason I'm asking those things is because who I'm talking to is not looking, they're passive, they're employed. So sometimes we got to explain all that, because I'd say 50% of them out there just think we're going to open a drawer or go to a job board or whatever the hell it is.
And I agree with that, Chris. I think that's just it. I mean, if they've worked with, again, I just say from a statistical standpoint, the majority of our competitors just don't, it's send me the job description, or my hiring manager, Chris, will say, hey, Jeff, let me send you the job description, and off and running you can go. And they really think that that's how we go about finding A players in the marketplace. And it doesn't work that way. So they have to understand what our process is. They have to understand who we're actually going to target on their behalf. They also have to understand this. They have to understand that we're not just trying to satisfy them. In other words, we're not, you're telling me you're looking for this. Okay, well, I'm going to go find that. But the other half of the equation is, in terms of satisfying them, the candidate, the other half of that equation, it's just as important for you, Mr. or Miss Hiring Manager, that I know just exactly how good a fit this opportunity is for the individual that ultimately will play in, will take this role, as it is to make sure that that candidate is the right fit for you. I mean, if we look at this, this is the only thing that I've ever done in my life where we have a two-buyer situation. Even though only one side pays us, the client company pays us. And I think that's the mistake that most, again, professionals in our industry make, is that they just try to go satisfy the client. That is not unimportant. I realize the importance of it when they're investing whatever, 20, 30, 50, maybe even over $100,000 for us to bring somebody, to them. But isn't it just as important to satisfy the candidate side? Yeah, I mean, these are people that ideally, if we put them in the right situation, right, and it's just as good for them, it's personally, professionally, financially better, than the current situation. And won't they be, generally speaking, won't they be happier if that holds true? Yeah. Won't they be more productive if that holds true? Yeah. If they're happier and more productive, won't they, generally speaking, stay longer if that holds true? Yeah. So if we've got somebody that's going to be more impactful, happier, and stay longer because we've matched that opportunity up to the candidate side as much as we try to match the candidate up to the client side, isn't that doing what's in the best interest of our client, even though we're doing what's in the best interest of our candidate? Patrick, give me your thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, I think in terms of matchmaking, but I was also thinking about something you said and where we do kind of lose focus sometimes because the client's going to pay us. They think it's their way. When we're the experts that are going to tie the two ends together and bring it home. So we have to be very upfront of, this is a process. This is what works. This is, what won't work. And if I don't have enough information to sell an opportunity, would you be moving forward for a first date? So you really have to make sure you have the right proper information. And if something comes up, you have to address it. You can't let it fester. Otherwise, you're going to lose the trust of the candidate as well. I had a case that I've never had happen on Friday. The client's going back to the drawing board to make it more attractive, and whether it's going to work for the candidate or not, but it was organized under the wrong group of the person that they were trying to attract. And throughout interviewing, somebody was really holding their ground, and they're like, shit, if this guy's going to do it, everybody's going to do it. And how do we address that? So it was always part of my concerns up front. It wasn't brand new news to them, but in debriefing, they need to pull it into a different silo and that candidate's going to get first crack at it because it's going to look like him. But we had to hit the pause button.
Well, and you said something, Patrick, I think that everybody needs to jot down because this is critical. And I'll paraphrase it. Excuse me. You basically said, let me put you in the shoes of the candidate, Mr. or Ms. Hiring Manager. If this were you, if I were tapping you on the shoulder and I came armed with whatever, job description information, what level of interest would you have if you're gainfully employed, you're happy where you're at, you're open to other opportunities because you should be, because the company is never anymore. Companies don't have the best interest, generally speaking, of their candidates, of the people, their employees. Companies don't have their best interest at heart. Companies have the company's best interest at heart. That's why good people, A players, people that if they lost their job, it would be devastating to them, but yet they still find themselves, on the outside looking in through no fault of their own. A players get downsized, people that it would really, really hurt their situation, they get downsized. People that are making an impact on a company, and not just in a financial way, but they're making an impact on the culture in a positive way. They're making an impact on the people in a positive way. They can find themselves in the breadline, so to speak, in the unemployment line through no fault of their own. Companies have the company's best interest at heart. That's why the need for us will never go away. Not for as long as I'm still on this planet, or anybody, on here are on this planet. And so you have to have that information. And I think, Patrick, to your point, sometimes it takes, listen, Patrick, and however you say it as diplomatically or as direct as you want to, or a combination of both. Patrick, here's why I'm trying to gather this information, and here's what I'm really trying to know. Because if you're that person that I tapped on the shoulder, let's say we're having a completely different conversation. I'm not trying to work with you to fill positions. I'm trying to work with you to get you interested in taking a look at another position that could have a positive impact on your career. But I don't know how the hell it could have a positive impact on your career. And I just say, hey, Patrick, I'm a recruiter. I focus in your space. I'm looking to fill this job. Would you like to take a peek at it? And furthermore, would you like to go out in the marketplace looking at another job while you're gainfully employed and you run the risk of losing your current livelihood because you're looking elsewhere? And I've got no meat on the bone. I've got no sizzle. I've got nothing but job description information. Here's the title of this position. Here's a little bit of the duties and responsibilities. Would you like to jump?
No, I think it's more first date type, mentality. But then once you set that up, you really have to work with the client. Hey, they're not 100% sold. I've done the best I can to get them to this point.
Yep.
It's on you to reel them in, because they're unsure. They like their boss. They've been burned before. We can go a laundry list of everything we hear throughout the day. But, when it comes down to it, they're going to make that move for the next person they're reporting to. That person really has to reel them in, or they're going to struggle to find people to begin with.
Right. And that's the second part. This will probably be the next Monday, and I know it's 9 o'clock, and I'll set it up for next Monday. But, how do we then use this information? And how do we work with hiring managers? Think about this. How do we work with hiring managers in the process to be able to then, we've gotten the candidate into the fold. Now, how do we keep them into the fold and ultimately land that candidate, vis-a-vis a proper placement? So next week is how do we use this information now going forward, not just to attract, but to keep that person in the fold and ultimately land it. So, all right, you guys, it's 9:01. Have a great Monday. See you all tomorrow.